Hello, my name is Michael Garrick, and this is the PoppinCulture Podcast. Here with me is Yuncle Boudreaux. He's a comedian, singer, songwriter, and motivational speaker. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I'm honored to be here.
We're at PoppinCulture. We're all about pop culture and the people that love it, and we're also about the cultures that influence pop culture. But before we get into that, I would love to hear the story about how did you come up with the name Yuncle Boudreaux?
Well, the Yuncle part was added very recently, okay? And it started, I used to, when I was a little boy, we had a record of this comedian named Justin Wilson. He was a Cajun. He told Cajun stories.
Okay.
And I listened to that record so much. I mean, I was little, like 5 or 6, 7 years old, 8 years old. And he talked like those Cajuns talk. Have you ever seen, like, Gator people or anything like that?
Yes,
you know,
that's like swamp people?
Yeah, swamp people,
okay.
like Troy.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So he told them stories, and he talked like this right here, you know. I got this friend lives over in Stuttgart, Arkansas, and he got this retrieving dog, and I would listen, and I would learn to talk like him until I could tell those stories with that accent,
nice.
Okay? And by the time I was in high school, I was the storyteller. We're sitting around, you know, football practice is over, we're waiting on our rides or whatever, and somebody'd say, hey, Ryan, which is my real name, that's what I go by, my real name. They'd say, Ryan, tell us one of them stories. So I tell one of those Justin Wilson hunting stories or, you know, retrieving dog stories or whatever. And so then later I said, well, I'm going to add some extra stories. So I'd take Jerry Clower stories. He was a comedian. And I would take some of his stories and alter them a little bit. Not that I didn't want to be a complete plagiarist, of course, but alter them just a little bit. And so that became my thing. You know, we'd sit around, I'd tell stories. And then I started making up my own. Well, I never gave the character a name. But I would morph into the Cajun, you know, accent. And I'd talk about my friend, what got this, you know, this pretty girlfriend. And they would, you know, just do that. And I was in the ministry for years. You can't really always tell it by some of the things I say now. But I had a friend of mine that I would go preach revival meetings for him.
Try not to hit the table, it'll pick up.
I went to preach a revival meeting for him, and he said, when you come this time, I'd always come in on Sundays. He said, come in on Saturday, and I want you to get some overalls. If you don't have any, let's buy you some overalls. And I want you to talk to our youth group as Boudreaux. And I'd never given him a name. I said, you mean like a Cajun? Because Boudreaux is a common Louisiana name. A lot of Cajuns.
I didn't know that.
If you Google Boudreaux and Thibodeau, there's a host of jokes called Boudreaux and Thibodeau jokes.
Okay.
And so he said, I want you to tell some of them stories. So we didn't really rehearse anything. I gave him a list of stuff to ask me about. And sort of like I tried to do with you last night, but in this case it was definitely needed. And so I was supposed to be Pastor Davis's cousin Boudreaux from Louisiana, and it's on YouTube.
Okay.
If anybody watching or listening wants to just go to YouTube and type in youth meeting, like youth meeting for a church, youth meeting Boudreaux, it'll probably come up. Now I was a lot thinner and didn't have this beard, so I looked a little different. But about 19 minutes long, maybe a little less. And we just went through it, unrehearsed. He would ask me, well, tell me about your first wife, Beulah. And I went off on Beulah and how mean she was. And my new wife, Bertha, and how fat she was. And then just funny stories. And that's where the name Boudreaux came from. So when I would go to these open mics and sing, and I said, you know, I like telling stories. I like getting people to laugh. Now, the Yuncle, where that came from is, I would say, you know, I'm your Uncle Boudreaux, like I'm your Uncle Boudreaux, you know, and I usually followed up with, I might not be your Uncle Boudreaux, but my brother got around, so if you was born after 77, I might be your Uncle Boudreaux. So when I decided to, you know, but don't mention my brother's name around your mom and them, you know. So that's where it was just going to be, I'm your Uncle, Yuncle. And when I decided to make that my stage name for, you know, doing my performances, I decided Uncle Boudreaux is probably taken somewhere. Yeah. There's actually a song out called Uncle Boudreaux Went to Texas or something like that. I haven't listened to it. But so I said, well, if I spell it with that Y, then it's going to be all mine. And as it turns out, like I now have the right to the domain name YuncleBoudreaux.com.
Okay.
In fact,
Nice.
In fact, the page is already built. We haven't published it yet because we really don't have anything on it much.
Okay.
But that's where that came from. Now, the Cajun accent I don't do with my routine anymore, because if I was telling a story that I already had memorized with that accent, I could do it perfectly. But when I was like, I guess you'd say freestyling or just little one-liners or working the crowd, it was hard for me to keep that accent all the way through it. And I, as you can tell, I have a Southern accent, but I just add a little bacon to it and some fat back whenever I'm on stage, and it comes out a little bit more kind of country, like this here, like that. And on occasion, depending on what I'm doing, if I were doing like a little 10-minute show and they really wanted Cajun humor, but I could do the whole thing with the Cajun Southern Louisiana type, accent throughout the whole thing. But so that's where the Yuncle was just basically to make sure I could get the domain name and that nobody else was out there being called Yuncle Boudreaux. So,
Nice. Thank you. That's great. I'm glad that all came together. It's definitely working out for you amazingly. Like you said, we did talk yesterday, and you said you wanted to talk about a little bit of movie culture. You said you wanted to discuss about good guys and bad guys.
yeah. See, I used to be a wrestling fan.
Okay.
The difference between wrestling and wrestling is wrestling, you get to come off the top rope. See? Wrestling, you got to wear these funky uniforms and them helmets or whatever them stuff. Well, so we were wrestling fans coming up, and I was 100% Ric Flair fan.
Okay.
Good guy, bad guy, didn't care. I liked him as a face. I liked him as a heel. Didn't matter. I liked Ric Flair. The Four Horsemen came out. They were the dirtiest people out there. I didn't care. I loved them. And because I realized, even though at that time I still thought it was real.
Okay.
Because it seemed real. Today's wrestling, and my son, he's 29 years old. He's special needs. He's a little bit mentally challenged and has cerebral palsy. You've met him.
Oh, very nice guy.
Great kid. When I see him, he's still a kid to me,
Okay.
even though he's 29 years old. But he still watches wrestling, and he knows it's staged, it's scripted. But I tell him all the time. I said, son, wrestling today, what happens in the ring is phenomenal. The stuff they do, the physicality, the flips, the tumbles, the jumps, going through tables. They never did that when I was a kid. But the storylines back then were so much more believable. You just believed that the masked superstar hated Mr. Wrestling number 2. You just believed it. Well, I became a Flair fan, loved him. But I realized even then I believed it was real, but a part of me knew this is an act he plays. And I decided I'm going to pull for who I like.
Okay.
It didn't matter if they were good guys or bad guys, because somebody in an office somewhere wrote down, for the next 6 months, you're going to be a bad guy. I knew that. So here's the key to pulling for the bad guys, at least back in my day. Now, it's cool to pull for bad guys. You got just as many people pulling for bad guys in wrestling as good guys. Back when I was doing it, nobody pulled for the bad guys, except for me and my buddies. And our girlfriends would pull for, you familiar with any of the old wrestlers from back then, like Sting,
Yes.
Lex Luger? Okay.
Yes.
The Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. Oh, our girlfriends would pull for those guys. And we're pulling for, Arn Anderson and Ric Flair and all the bad guys. And here was the key. I only saw what the referee saw. So Ric Flair's in trouble. Arn Anderson hits the other guy with a chair. My girlfriend goes, he hit him with a chair. What? What chair? If the referee didn't see it, by golly, I didn't see it. So pulling for the bad guys back then was cool for me even then. But now, they didn't want you to. They wanted you to pull for the good guys against the bad guys. Now they don't care, and it's happening in movies. And that was one of the things that I'd alluded to before when we talked on the phone. Rose Dawson is a monster. Now, for those of you listening, you know who Rose Dawson is. She's on the Titanic. And I used to be a substitute teacher in 6th and 7th, 8th grade, right? And
Okay.
You know how substitutes are. Get them off subject. Get them talking about something. Oh, I'm so sorry this happened. Get them talking off subject. And, and then you don't have to do your classwork, which is what they did a lot for me. And so I would they would talk about movies or something, and I would tell these girls, Rose Dawson was horrible, and they'd be like, no, she was in love with Jack. She was this, she was that. And if you haven't seen Titanic, well, I don't know how to help you. Everybody's seen Titanic. So it'll be on next week sometime, I'm sure. Just turn the TV on.
It'll be on USA Network.
Yeah, absolutely. And I watched it when I used to tell those little girls in the class, I say, next time it's on, which is probably next week on the USA Network, watch it, but try your best to turn your heart off, turn your brain on, and ask yourself, would I want to really be like her? And this is where I was telling you, good guys and bad guys, the line is blurred. And I think that's a prime example, because if you just walked up to somebody that loved the movie Titanic and said, don't you think Rose was a horrible person? They're going to go, you're crazy. But hear me out. First of all, this is 1912, not 2012, 1912, and she strips buck naked for a guy she just met so he can draw her. That's a little trashy by today's standard, but by 1912, really? What kind of woman was she? Okay, I know it was a different era, different time, but she's still a woman, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. 2 days later, she's in the backseat of a Model T steaming up the windows with a guy she just met while she's engaged to a guy named Cal. I get it, listener. Cal was a jackass. I understand that. He was a horrible person. But you were engaged to him, okay? So break up with him, throw that money away, because Cal had money. She didn't have money. See, I pay attention to details in movies. My girlfriend gets so mad at me because if she comes there to talk to me and I'm watching even a TV show, I'll pause it. What do you want? Blah, blah, blah. We'll talk. Yada, yada, yada. She's like, why do you do that? Because I don't want to miss nothing. Every line in that script was written for a reason. I want to know what it is, what was said. Well, Rose Dawson, her mama told her, you know what? Our fortune's gone. We don't have any money. Any hope of us having the kind of life we're used to having is you better marry this Cal guy. Should she marry him for his money? Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. We're talking about her character here. All right? So she becomes intimate with somebody that she's not engaged to. The guy she's engaged to is a jerk. I get it. But at the end of the movie, well, let me go back to the beginning of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, the captain that found that picture, you hear him on a phone call. If you pay attention to the detail, he's telling whoever he's on the phone with that he's mortgaged his house. He has friends that have mortgaged their homes and invested into this expedition to find this big blue diamond necklace, right? If he don't find it, he's penniless. He staked everything. All these people he's on that ship that he's paying, he's got to pay those people. He's going to be broke. All right, now, this 90-year-old woman sees the picture, says, I'm her. They fly her and that fuzzy dog to the boat, and she sits and lays her eyes on that picture. Michael, what did that picture mean to her? Oh, my God, that had to be the most fabulous thing in her life, to see that picture that Jack, her love, that saved her in every way possible, drew for her. Now, at the end of the movie, it's discovered that she has that necklace. I watched that movie in the theater. Now, they always say black folks talk to the screen at the movies. Isn't that like a stereotype? You ever talk to the screen at the movie?
No.
No. The best people don't. I wasn't the best people that day. When I saw the necklace, I'm like, oh, shit, she's going to give it to the captain. Michael, when she threw that son of a bitch in the water, I was like, oh, loud. I was like, oh, hell no. Oh, I was so angry at that woman. This man has mortgaged his whole life, and the world thinks you're a saint. And that has to be one of the bitchiest moves I've ever seen in theater, for her to throw that necklace away. And I've heard the arguments, well, she was giving it to Jack. It wasn't Jack's damn necklace either. But one of the things that made me the maddest, though, is when she's talking about, at the end, when she's an old woman, she talks about Cal and whatever became of him. She said, the crash of 29 hurt his interest really bad. He put a put a gun in his mouth that year, or so I'm told. And the look on her face when she says that, next time the movie's on, get to that point, she has this look of glee. Okay, he was a jackass.
Yes.
You took his necklace. That was his necklace.
Yes.
And you're 80 years later, you're gleefully talking about the fact that he killed himself. I'm sorry, she's a horrible woman. And that's what pop culture does. It blurs the line between who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And we could talk about it. By the time Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 came out,
Yes, sir.
We were pulling for Freddy Krueger. He
Yes.
had he didn't have good lines in the first two movies. But by the time you got to that third movie, he had the coolest lines. He was the coolest bad guy ever.
It was not a comedy, but they were slowly trying to make it a comedy.
Right. It was definitely lighthearted.
Yes.
You know, and so when I said I want to talk about good guys and bad guys, wrestling, like I said, they've done it. And a lot of movies. And I think about even Disney movies like Beauty and the Beast. Belle, she worked with the Beast.
Yes.
She won him over. She melted his heart. She made him fall in love. Well, if she'd have put that much effort into Gaston, he might not have been too bad either.
True.
I mean, Gaston was a jerk, but he loved him some Belle. Should he have put her daddy into prison? Nah, I ain't saying he was a good guy. But I will say this. If Gaston had got to the palace about 5 minutes later, after the Beast kissed Belle and turned back into the prince, Gaston would have whipped that prince's ass.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, the Beast whipped Gaston.
Yes.
The prince wasn't going to do that.
No.
And we forget, why was he the Beast? Because he sent an old woman away from his door that just wanted shelter for the night and some food. He was as big a jerk as Gaston was. And pop culture can make us blur the lines over who's the villain, who's the good guy. And but it's fascinating. But here's the thing. I go back to me back in the 80s watching wrestling, and I pulled for the bad. And that Flair was a good guy. I pulled for him as a good guy. I just liked him. I liked his performance. But so I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. But the old question: does life imitating art or art imitating life? I think each one attempts to one up the other. I think we see art and our lives imitate it, and then art pushes the envelope and starts and I think that's why progressively things sometimes get more violent. If you take a movie like, do you like your horror movies?
Of course.
The Saw movie.
Yep.
If you just showed that, if you could somehow get in a time machine and take that movie back to the 50s or 60s and show it in a theater, people would pass out.
Yes.
Because Night of the Living Dead, well, actually, was the first.
They were still so used to Universal movies, so they were still stuck on Universal monsters at that time.
Yeah. Well, but Night of the Living Dead, which was black and white in
Yes.
the 60s, George A. Romero, mm-hmm. the granddaddy of all the zombie movies, people were throwing up in the theater.
Yep.
You watch that now and it's laughable, because this keeps getting, the envelope keeps getting pushed a little bit further each time.
That was a very strong ending too. Like I didn't see that ending coming at all.
Oh, when he stood up. Oh yeah. Well, have you seen No Country for Old Men?
Of course.
Now that's an interesting movie for me because I love Tommy Lee Jones. Even back when he was, what his first big film was?
He was a doctor, right? Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong movie.
No, he was he played Loretta Lynn's husband in Coal Miner's Daughter.
Okay, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, he you would know when he smiles, you can tell that's Tommy Lee Jones. He had like blondish hair in that movie and stuff. And Loretta Lynn said if everybody that knew her husband said nobody could have done it better than Tommy Lee Jones, and he was a relatively unknown actor back when that movie came out. That movie came out in the early 70s, But I watched No Country for Old Men with a buddy of mine, and he loved it. Michael, I hated it. Because when it ends, spoiler alert, No Country for Old Men. Okay,
it's only been out for a decade.
Yeah. If it's spoiling it, then you're kind of behind times. Okay, Bruce Willis was a ghost in Sixth Sense too, by the way. 20 years, I think, for that one. But No Country for Old Men. When it ends, he's telling about his dreams, and then he says, "And then I woke up," and then the credits roll. We were watching it. I was like, "What the hell?" It was on DVD, and I was like, so we rewinded it. Because we thought somehow we skipped a whole scene. And we kept doing it. We're like, did that movie really just end like that? How did that happen? And I hated it. I said, it was horrible. My buddy's like, man, that was a great movie. I'm like, that movie? The one we just saw? There's nothing. There's no resolve. There's no winner. There's no loser. It just freaking ends. But then I watched it one day. I'm just sitting around the house. It comes on. I watch it again. Loved it. It's one of my favorite movies now. And the antagonist and protagonist are never in the same place at the same time in that movie. I found that fascinating. Have you ever seen the movie Memento?
Of course.
You do a podcast on pop culture. Of course you've seen these movies. Here's what I want. I want to get that movie, and they say if you buy it, there's a bonus on it where it actually shows you the movie in chronological order.
Nice.
And I've actually tried that before on my DVR.
Yes, sir.
Like go to the end and then watch and then rewind and then watch some more and rewind and watch, just to try to get because you're talking about a twist ending, which technically it's a twist beginning, but you don't see it to the end.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Again, another 10-year-old movie.
Yeah.
But
that's a really good movie.
Yeah. Oh, that is, I should not say any more about that one. Memento.
Yeah.
I don't even know anybody that's in it, but that is phenomenal.
Definitely good. Definitely watch it.
That's a must see. So, what else on your mind, movies wise or whatever?
I just wanted to give you that I agree with you, and if I could tell one story, how I feel, what you just said.
Sure.
Wizard of Oz.
Go ahead, tell your story. Then
I remember seeing it and just thinking, okay, it's gonna be embarrassing to say, I didn't see the Wizard of Oz till I was 19.
Your parents were bad parents.
No. I grew up. No.
Okay.
I grew up with the Wiz. So
I'm sorry.
I actually, but I like it just because that's what I grew up on. So I actually enjoy the Wiz a lot. But I'm gonna agree it's not the best movie ever. But that's why I grew up watching. And then I saw it on ABC Family the first time I ever saw the Wizard of Oz. And I remember watching it and I was just like, man, this woman is killing everybody. Like first the house fell, she killed one person. And then I was like, she got her friends together and they killed another person with water. I was like, this is all right. This is how this movie goes. But that's what I was thinking when you told your example of like, are we sure we're supposed to be rooting for these people? Like,
right. Well,
just going on a killing spree.
I could call. I won't do it. It would be fun. I could call my girlfriend right now. I could call my son, Robbie, who you met, get him on speakerphone and say, hey, Robbie, what's your dad's favorite movie? My girlfriend, my son, my mom, the people that know me best, none would hesitate unless they've been drinking. They'd say, Wizard of Oz, freaking love it. Watched it as a kid. And every time I watched it, I saw something I didn't see
my bad. Sorry.
before. What? No. What do you mean? We're bad about what?
I didn't mean to say that about the movie. It's a good movie. I really enjoy it.
No.
But that's what I got the first time I watched it. Like, she's just killing everybody.
Oh, no. I agree. But it was just my favorite movie. And in fact, when we were living in Iowa.
Okay.
This was probably about 10 or 15 years ago. And my ex-wife, she had told some people that Ryan's got that movie memorized from beginning to end. From she's not coming yet, Toto, to this is my room and I'm never going to leave here again, for there's no place like home. And I said, well, I don't know about that, but I know it pretty well. And I told the guys that we were there at a couple's house, just having like a little dinner party or something. And I said, I know one thing. If you give me a line from that movie, I bet you I can give you the next line. I can tell you who said that line and what was said back to him and so forth. He goes, oh, really? I said, yeah. So he disappeared for a little while. He come back down with a ream of paper like this. He went up there and printed the script to The Wizard of Oz. And he came down there. He started reading lines from the script of The Wizard of Oz. And he couldn't stop me because I just knew it. I've seen it that many times and knew it that well. But I saw just last night, somebody put something on Facebook, and it showed Glinda, the Good Witch.
Yes, sir.
And she's standing with her wand, and a woman posted this, and it said something about don't step out of line with me. The last bitch, and it said bitch instead of witch, the last whatever bitch which that stepped out of line with me ended up under a house, and it's Glinda. Yeah. And I'm reading this thing, I'm like, it's bull crap. I'm laying in bed last night. I said, look at this. My girlfriend's looking at it. It baffles her, the things that aggravate me. I get mad over the little stuff. I'm like, Glinda didn't have nothing to do with that.
Not one thing.
Not one thing. So I typed a message. I'm like, What are you talking about? I said, Glenda needs to know her role. I said, first of all, that was Dorothy's house. Second of all, a tornado did that. Third of all, if Glenda could have done something about the Wicked Witch of the East, she'd have done it. But she didn't because she couldn't. I'm like, I don't know who did that meme, but they need to learn their Wizard of Oz history.
I can only imagine somebody reading your comment like, man, this guy took this to heart.
Michael, when I turned 50, I'm 51 years old. So
what?
this ain't happening.
I thought you were like 22.
I know, right? You really shouldn't lay it on. If you're going to lie, don't lay it on quite that thick.
Oh,
but 45 would have been flattering. 22, that's just insulting.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But I'm 51 years old, right? Things when I was 49 that never bothered me started bothering me at 50. Little things. My money. Now, I can't show you because I don't have a dollar. I have no money, zero money in my pocket. But when I give somebody a $20 bill and they give me $13 back, or say they're giving me $17 back.
Okay.
How hard is it to give me that 10, that 5, and those 2 ones facing the right direction, right side up? How hard is that? Now, is it necessary? No. But damn, we'll take some pride. When I was 49, I didn't care. Turned 50, started getting ticked off. Little things. I'm going to end up putting some of this stuff in my comedy routine because it makes me mad that I get mad over stuff that I used to never get mad about. Stuff in commercials. Okay, you've heard this. I guarantee you've heard this. Say they're selling furniture.
Okay.
We got these sales for Labor Day, up to 50% off or more on select furniture. You've heard that,
Of course.
or up to 30% off or more on so and so. Now wait a minute. Either it's up to 30%, or it can be more. It can't be both. If it's up to 30%, then that's freaking what it is. It's up to 30%. It ain't up to and more. Now, if they just fix it and say, save 30% or more, I'm okay with that. But don't tell me save up to 30% or more. Up to means up to. That's it's little. But it's something you got to look forward to. When you turn 50, things start making you mad that used to not do it. And that's just one of those stupid things that makes me mad.
I got a little time, but I can't wait. I feel it coming, though. Like, I can imagine.
How old are you now, Michael?
28.
28. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're Robbie's age.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, well, Robbie's a little older than you. I have 4 kids. I got Robbie. He's my oldest. He's Robert Ryan Davis Jr. And then Stuart Chandler is my middle son.
Okay.
Anthony Leon's my youngest son. Leon is the one, and they all go by middle. Well, Robbie goes by his first name. He's Robert Jr., but he goes by Robbie. But Stuart Chandler goes by Chandler.
Okay.
Anthony Leon goes by Leon. Tracy Ann Elizabeth goes by Sissy. That's just because she had 3 brothers that insisted her name was going to be Sissy.
Okay.
But and I always went by my middle name. My brother went by his middle name. It's just something we, not even thinking about it, we just end up doing. But Leon is my son that if I get a call from the sheriff's department, Mr. Davis, we have your son down here, I know which son they're talking about. They're talking about, is he a bad kid? No, but he's that one that if I get that call, I know which one it is. My middle son, I love all my kids. My middle son, though, Chandler, he's that all-American boy.
Okay.
He's the cream of the crop. Great kid. I was a pastor in a former life. Haven't lost my faith. Just pursuing different things. Still believe in God. Still accept Christ. My son gave his life to Christ at 8 years old. Chandler, I'm talking about. When he was 13, he's at a revival meeting or a youth meeting or something. He surrendered to be a youth minister. He's 27. He never doubted it, and that's what he's doing now in Spartanburg.
Okay.
He's married to a beautiful African-American woman. They're going to make me some beautiful caramel-colored grandbabies. In fact, there's one coming.
Congratulations.
He's got like blondish hair.
Okay.
And I'm like, your kids are going to look like a piece of caramel with like red hair or something. They're going to be so freaking beautiful. And it's coming in April. She's a school teacher. He's a full-time youth pastor. Makes good money at it.
I know you're very proud.
He's a youth pastor at a big church.
Nice.
And all through school, it was amazing because he's very athletic.
Okay.
And he's like 6 foot.
Oh, yeah.
He's bigger than me. He lettered in 4 varsity sports in high school. No boy at Branchville High School, it's a small, nothing high school, but no boy had ever lettered in 3 varsity sports until my 2 sons did it. Now, Robbie, of course, he didn't, but Leon and Chandler did football, basketball, and baseball. No boy had ever lettered in 3 sports.
Okay.
Chandler decided that he was going to play soccer his senior year so he could letter in a 4th varsity sport. So he was voted Athlete of the Year. Throughout all of that, he was still maintained a Christian testimony, was known as the guy that's going to be the youth pastor, one of the most highly respected guys on his football team. The students loved him. The good kids loved him. The bad kids respected him. The teachers adored him. And he was just that kid. And I love all my kids. Don't misunderstand me. But here's what I tell people. Everything, all the good character, morals, ethics, everything that was in me somehow found their way to him. And that bad kid I was, that went to Leon. Not that he's that bad, but I'm proud of all my kids, and I really am. And my daughter, she's a social worker.
Okay. So
don't beat the kid, or I'm just saying, she'll come take him.
Yeah.
That's what she does. But hopefully you'll see more than just Robbie. You'll be at a show that we're at, and they'll try to come. Hopefully.
I can't wait to meet them, man. They seem like very nice people. I know you raised them well.
Oh yeah. Yep. I got a little emotional talking about my kids.
Oh no.
My kids and my dog. I love my dog too, but I got more pictures of my dog on my phone than my kids.
Okay.
But
okay.
Well, what else? What else we got?
Before I get you out here, I know we just talked about country, and I just wanted to ask you, how do you really think country music has influenced pop culture?
I think the pop culture has influenced country music more than the other way around. I think that there's a song out now. It's called "I Hope Grandpas Never Die."
About Riley Green.
Yeah. There's a line in it where he says, I wish they still played country music on country radio. And that's a fact. What passes as country music today, with the exception of a few people like Justin Moore, Luke Combs, there's a few that are real still kind of traditionalist sounding, Craig Morgan, most of the modern, like Florida Georgia Line, Sam Hunt, Jason Aldean, most of their music, if you went back in time and played it in the 80s, they would say that's pop music. And Chris Stapleton does an amazing job on Tennessee Whiskey. But when I go sing karaoke, I sing Tennessee Whiskey to the George Jones version because that was country to me, And Chris Stapleton's another one that his music very soulful,
yes.
very very country. There's some reaction videos on you've seen some of those where folks that are fans of hip hop never heard. They'll see his face and they'll hear him sing. They're like, it's amazing what he does. But I think like we were speaking the other day, in the 50s and 60s, when you had Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, and then you had the men like even Johnny Cash, George Jones, Merle Haggard, Hank Williams Sr. You heard what you heard, and the pop music started synthesizing and changing and altering. They'll make anybody sound like a superstar. Back then that was all you had.
Yeah, I would have loved to see how far Hank Williams Sr. and Patsy Cline would have gone if they hadn't passed away so young.
Oh yeah. And did you tell me once that you had seen the movie about Hank Williams?
Yes, I saw the movie, and then I saw the play about Patsy Cline a few years ago. Apparently, Patsy Cline had like a fan/pen pal, I guess, and they became very close, and they made a play about her life.
Oh, wow. So I wasn't familiar with that. I've seen Coal Miner's Daughter a good dozen times, and I don't know which Hank Williams movie you saw.
The one that came out, I want to say 2013, 2014. Tom Hiddleston played him.
Okay, that's a good movie, and it's that's the one where it's basically it doesn't go all the way up to his death. I don't think it goes like he leaves to go to West Virginia or something. I don't think it actually shows him dying. There's another movie I'll suggest. It's not as good a movie as far as the performance. Mm-hmm. It's called The Last Ride.
Okay.
And I don't know how accurate it is, but it's based on the last 48 hours of his life. And apparently, the person that was driving him, he died in the backseat of that Cadillac.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
he heart failure. He was on pills.
Okay.
But he had spina bifida or something like
that.
Oh,
yeah.
And
wow.
He was in chronic pain. He took a lot of pills. So it was a overdose / heart failure.
At that time, I'm pretty sure they didn't know.
They didn't know. Well, Hank Williams was the original country bad boy. I mean, he was a rebel.
Really?
Oh gosh, yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
And in the movie The Last Ride, they couldn't find anybody to drive him. They didn't fly. They drove from venue to venue. And his manager found this young guy at a gas station and paid him to drive Hank Williams for this trip. Had got to get him to this place by this time, and this place by that time, and this place by that time. And the guy had no idea who he was. He didn't listen to country music. He didn't know who he was. In fact, Hank gave him a false name, and took him to these different places. And if the story is right, Hank Williams wrote a song in the backseat of that car the night he died. And this kid took him to the hospital because he couldn't wake him up. And his manager, the way the movie says anyway, along with that song, found a note that said, "Give the car to the kid." And the legend, the myth has it that the manager signed the title over to that boy, and that boy drove off from the hospital, and nobody ever knows whatever happened to him. It's kind of spooky. Well, we've mentioned David Allan Coe, a controversial character to say the least. His song "The Ride," you had to have heard that one, right?
Yes, sir.
Which is one of the best songs about Hank Williams ever. That and "Midnight in Montgomery" by Alan Jackson,
yes, sir,
is really good too. But that movie, The Last Ride, again, I don't know how accurate it is. I'm sure they took a lot of, poetic license to make it.
They definitely had to make it a movie. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. They had to dramatize.
Oh yeah, but it's interesting. If you have any interest in that kind of stuff at all, that it's good. And I've seen the other one you're talking about. I think it was called "I Saw the Light."
I haven't seen it in so long. I remember it not really. I just thought it was a little boring. But you can't make somebody's life exciting if it wasn't.
Right. Well, The Ride covers those last 48 hours, and it sounds like it was a wild ride.
Nice.
Bar fights and all kind of stuff.
Yeah,
they a little bit of time.
Yeah, they dramatized it. Okay.
Yeah. So
nice. Thank you so much for being on the PoppinCulture Podcast. Is there anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Oh, well, by the time this comes out, hopefully my website will be up and running. I have the domain name, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, YuncleBoudreaux.com. That's YUNCLE. Boudreaux, BOUDREAUX, like they spell it in Louisiana, YuncleBoudreaux.com. I'm on Facebook, just a regular friend page, Yuncle Boudreaux, and I'm on Instagram. Available for bookings. You can reach me on Facebook for office parties, family reunions. Just pay me enough money, I'll just come entertain your family. But just looking to get out there. Not everything I do is family friendly, but I definitely can alter it to whether you're the Partridge family or the Manson family. I can probably fit you in. So be glad to be of some service to you.
All right. Thank you again for coming on the show, and you guys have a great day.